Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Saravia the Movies. So today we're talking about films that I saw in 1985. Films I saw in theaters in 1985. So, although there are many more films I have seen from that year, these are the only ones that I saw in theaters to the best of my recollection. And I enjoy doing this series, and I'll be doing more of these. So here we go. Let's start off with young Sherlock Holmes. Of course, based on the stories of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, except he's much younger in this case, going to university, and I guess how he meets Watson. And I remember enjoying this film a lot. It has a lot of special effects. It goes against the grain a little bit from the typical Sherlock Holmes that we remember of Basil Rathbone, or even, for that matter, the stories themselves. So, enjoyable. Interesting. It has a lot of flavor to it. It's well acted, and I think I've only seen it really twice, but I saw it in theaters once, and I do recall that the ending of the film seemed very much like, or the climax, right out of Temple of Doom a little bit. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom seemed very similar to that, but otherwise pretty good film, directed by Barry Levinson, one of his more unusual efforts. So, alright, Return of the Living Dead. This was Dan O'Bannon's film that he wrote and directed, and this was the first R-rated film that I went to see by myself. I don't know how I managed to do that, because I was 13 at the time, or 14. I think I just turned 14, and you know, you can't go to an R-rated film, at least in those days. I think you still can't really, if you were under the age of 17, unless accompanied by an adult. But I got in to see this one, so who knows how that happened. This was at the old Cinema City 5, which doesn't exist anymore. And, you know, I've always enjoyed Return of the Living Dead. It's one of my favorite zombie, pictures. It has tongue-in-cheek written all over it. Enjoyable movie, and it was actually exciting to see an R-rated film by myself. I actually managed to see by myself, not with my parents. Alright, Weird Science. Sometimes I think this is a 1986 flick, but I always get that wrong. This actually did come out in 85. This is the first John Hughes film I saw in theaters. Although I'd already been privy to John Hughes by way of 16 Candles. Breakfast Club I don't think was even out yet on VHS. And even though it came out in 85, I didn't get to see that in the theater. I wish I had. Weird Science is, again, sort of like Return of the Living Dead. It's tongue-in-cheek. It's original. It's got Kelly LeBrock. It's got Anthony Michael Hall. It's just a lot of fun. And, I think some of the humor today probably wouldn't go well. Wouldn't go over too well, but a fun movie. It's one I don't mind, like, looking back at here and there. It's just, I guess it's just a reminder for me. More nostalgia than anything else. But it's definitely good. And it's got one hell of an ending featuring some of the I think one character from The Road Warrior with the Mohawk, and Michael Berryman himself from Hills Have Eyes. So, yeah, enjoyable stuff. A View to a Kill was the last James Bond film to have Roger Moore, and I enjoy the movie. It's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. For many, it's considered to be one of the worst James Bond films, along with Moonraker. From Roger Moore, I liked it. It's more laid back Roger Moore stuff. It's not as exciting as some of his other ones, but it does have Christopher Walken as the villain. Definitely worth, it's got to be worth something there. And it's got Grace Jones. It's an unusual cast, and Tanya Roberts is the female lead. And it's fine for what it is. It could have been better. I was surprised to read recently that Roger Moore was voted the best James Bond of all time. He certainly was the smoothest and the most suave, but Sean Connery is still the best for me. But that's neither here or there. So, A View to a Kill. Okay, now, also has a song by Duran Duran, which is the From A View to a Kill, I believe, was the original title of the film. Alright, The Bride. This one I've only really seen once, but I remember liking it quite a bit. It's, of course, based on the story of the Bride of Frankenstein by way of the original 1935 film, which, of course, has been copied here and there by others, but The Bride has Jennifer Beals as the mate For the monster is played by Clancy Brown, and Sting is Victor Frankenstein. It's more goth than I think anyone had expected. It was not a box office success, but I enjoyed the movie. I really liked the relationship between the dwarf and the monster. That forms the emotional backbone of the movie. So I'd like to see it again someday. It was certainly a unique twist on the usual. That, along with followed 5 years later by Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound, which is certainly the most unusual take of the Frankenstein legend. All right, The Color Purple, Steven Spielberg's film based on the book by Alice Walker, Whoopi Goldberg's debut. Always like this film. It's a powerful movie, very well done, very well made, and a rich emotional story, especially the physical abuse that Whoopi Goldberg's character has to face from Danny Glover. A lot of it was very well handled. I still don't know why there's some people who have issues with The Color Purple, but it's Whoopi Goldberg's first Oscar nomination. She should probably have won Best Actress for that movie, despite it being her debut. But anyway, all right, let's move along to Teen Wolf. Now, this was a film following on the coattails of Back to the Future. But as usual with any film where somebody becomes a true superstar, really, which is what Michael J. Fox became after Back to the Future, which we'll talk about shortly, this one was made before Back to the Future. And it should have probably been more of a TV movie. It's not very good. The audience seemed to like it at the time. I mean, I guess I sort of liked it. I'm not going to say I didn't. There's nothing really to dislike. But it's just very superficially done. It's obvious, and, he becomes a werewolf, and it turns out I think it's either his dad or his uncle. I think it's his dad is also part of a lineage of werewolves, and he gets to play pretty damn good basketball in high school, and that's why by the end he says, I don't want to play basketball as the wolf, which everybody wants to see. I want to play it as myself. It's that type of tale. So, yeah, Michael J. Fox. I can't really say much more about Teen Wolf. All right, Silverado. This was a Western written by Lawrence Kasdan, I believe also directed by Lawrence Kasdan. I love Silverado. It's more, the way they used to make Westerns. Not a whole lot of complexity to it. Just, here are the good guys, here are the bad guys, that type of movie. But it's got some rich characters in it. It has a great cast. Scott Glenn, Kevin Kline, John Cleese, offbeat casting to say, for sure he plays the sheriff of a town. And Kevin Costner. This is the first time I saw Kevin Costner in a movie. This same year he did a smaller film called Fandango. But this was the first time I really noticed Costner. And, So, just a terrific Western. I'm a fan of Westerns anyway. This one was just more of a reminder of the way they used to make them. Before Clint Eastwood and, before even High Noon, really. Before complexity really started to enter the picture in that genre. Speaking of Westerns, there's Tom Berenger in Rustlers Rhapsody. This is a movie I kind of forgotten about. This was one of two Western parodies that came out that year. The other one being Lust in the Dust with Divine, which I have not seen. But I probably should have seen that instead. Rustlers Rhapsody is just not funny at all. That's all I can really say about Rustlers Rhapsody. Tom Berenger is ideal casting, and there's some pretty good sight gags, but overall it was just a terrible film. Very mediocre. And it needed a Mel Brooks vibe, but oh well. But he did that already with Blazing Saddles, so see Blazing Saddles instead of Rustlers Rhapsody. Moving along to Real Genius. This was a film by, I believe, the director Martha Coolidge. And these are about smart teenagers, or actually I should say more college-age type kids. And it's got Val Kilmer in it, and it's just a whole lot of fun. It's a blast of laughs. I love the movie. I've always enjoyed Real Genius. I think it's just very inspired, very witty. It's not dumbed down for anybody. It's just about smart kids who can take over the world from the adults. They somehow are smarter. Where a lot of movies during this decade, believe it or not, aside from what we were mostly inundated with, which is the teenage sex comedies a la Porky's and its infinite number of imitators. But there were also smart films about smart, resourceful teenagers and or people in college who somehow were smarter than the adults. The adults were dolts and the kids were smarter. It was interesting to see that, and Real Genius is a good example of that. So Rambo First Blood Part 2, my father took me to see this, and it's just one of those movies that I wish I had not seen. It's a sequel I didn't care for. I always liked First Blood. It's, to me, First Blood is not a great movie, but it's good for what it is, and it really showcased Sylvester Stallone playing the role of a Vietnam vet and killing machine, except that he didn't really kill too many people at all in First Blood, whereas Rambo First Blood Part 2 is the complete opposite. It's more of a, I guess you could almost say, jingoistic, flag-waving propaganda. And to some degree, the Rambo character in this case is out to photograph MIAs, when in fact he's been betrayed by the government, and he's been set up because, well, you don't expect Rambo to go take pictures. He tries to save some of the MIAs, but they plan to kill Rambo because he's getting too close to the truth or something like that. I don't know. It's just not a good film. You know, I can forgive a lot of things. I know that action films sometimes defy logic and physics, but sometimes he shows up in areas that he shouldn't be, whether he's covered in mud or and can kill somebody that just happens to cross his path, or if an enemy soldier who keeps shooting him and shooting and shooting and shooting, and no bullets ever. I mean, I know even the audience said, "No, come on!" And then he's got his bow and arrow and blows the guy away. Come on, this is just not. Not to mention the scene where he actually flies out of the water and grabs onto a helicopter just above. It just, yeah. That wouldn't have mattered if the film was entertaining. I always found Rambo First Blood Part 2 boring, not to mention Rambo 3 and the other sequels that came after. It just doesn't work, but that's just me. All right, let's move on to Pale Rider. Pale Rider, again, another Western, a serious Western, Clint Eastwood. This is sort of a different take on his film High Plains Drifter. So instead of the guy being something of a demon that comes into town, or like the devil himself, in this case he's more the angel. He is kind of, it's not unlike really the story of Shane, except a different, instead of a little boy that admires Shane, it's a young teenage girl, actually, or preteen. But he is a reverend and comes into this town and is out to help them out with cowboys trying to take advantage of others and greed and all that sort of thing. So I can't really recall the very specifics of it, but Pale Rider is an enjoyable Western. I've only really seen it twice, but I remember I liked it. Richard Kyle is also in the picture. And there's a great scene towards the end when one of the killers who are sent down to kill this guy because he's causing trouble for the town recognizes Eastwood. Says, "You." And yeah, that was quite a chilling scene. It's almost as if he's a supernatural character. But I liked that take on it. It was an interesting Western. All right, now we got Murphy's Romance. Sally Field, James Garner. This was an enjoyable, fluffy type comedy. It's just fine for what it is. James Garner is always terrific, and he's not around anymore, but he was a good pair with Sally Field. Again, I don't recall specifics. I've only really seen it once, but I remember James Garner's performance the most in this movie, and it's a cute little movie from what I remember, and I wouldn't mind seeing it again. The audience also seemed to like it, which I think is important. Okay, so moving on to Mask by Peter Bogdanovich. This is one of Peter Bogdanovich's very best films. In fact, I'd almost say it's as great a film as Last Picture Show. It is just truly fantastic story of true story of Rocky Dennis, who suffered from a disease not unlike John Merrick from The Elephant Man, although it has a different name to it, but I don't have that information with me right now. But Eric Stoltz gives his best performance that I've ever seen, and I've never been an Eric Stoltz fan. I think sometimes he ruins the movies he's in. I hate to say that, but I'm glad he was replaced as the lead for Back to the Future. I just don't care for him. I don't know what it is about Eric Stoltz. He seems indifferent to me. Not unlike what came out 2 years later, which was Some Kind of Wonderful, which was sort of the flip side of, in terms of gender, Pretty in Pink. But that movie's okay, but he kind of, I don't know. There's something about him that doesn't register with me. Anyhow, he is terrific in this movie, as is Sam Elliott, and of course Cher. This is her best performance, I think. I love her in Moonstruck, but I always think of Mask first. That's just me. Mask is a great movie. Just absolutely terrific, heartfelt, emotional, very honest film. And also, Rocky Dennis is not portrayed as some sort of a saint that we have to look up and wonder because of his affliction, this disease. He doesn't let it control him. It's others who look at him and see that he has this affliction. They feel sorry for him. And he's basically saying, don't feel sorry for me. I'm just another kid. I'm smart, and I want to go to school, and I want to fall in love with somebody. And in the case of the movie, there's a blind girl played by Laura Dern who I think towards the end realizes that he has this, he's been ravaged by this disease, but he doesn't let it control him, and I think she starts to see that. But then that relationship doesn't go any further. The real Rocky Dennis, even in the movie too, dies, unfortunately. But Mask is a great film. I can't say enough good things about it. One of my favorite films of the 80s, for sure. All right. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Now, this is one of those Mad Max movies I've not really seen more than once, but I do plan to, because I have the DVD, and eventually I'm going to review the first 3 Mad Max movies. And it won't be on YouTube, although I may talk about them, but I'll certainly have them on my blog. This movie disappointed me at the time. I didn't get it. I found it dull. I like Mel Gibson. I've always liked Mel Gibson, generally speaking, regardless of comments he's made privately or publicly. It's got a great cast. George Miller returns as a director, and you've got Tina Turner. You can't go wrong with that. Then there's the Master Blaster. I mean, there's a lot of terrific things in it. I guess I just have to see it again. And the original title, by the way, which most may not know, was Mad Max and the Children of the Sand, I believe was the full title. But I have to just revisit it, that's all. And I will, one of these days. But at the time, it disappointed me. I guess I just wanted something that was even more revved up than The Road Warrior. And, I love The Road Warrior. That's one of my favorite action films of all time. The Road Warrior is, you talk about a punk rock action picture, not dystopian, but apocalyptic. I mean, that is the best. And actually, even though I haven't really done a video on 1982 films that I've seen in theaters, that along with Blade Runner that came out that same year were the most influential pictures of that decade, for sure. So, I'll revisit it someday. All right, The Last Dragon. Now, The Last Dragon, I love. This is Barry Gordy's Last Dragon, as it's mentioned in the titles. And it's got Timac and Vanity, people with one-word names. I enjoyed it. I just loved it. It came out right around the time when I got became more and more of a fan of Bruce Lee. So this was just perfect. And it's a terrific movie, tongue-in-cheek. The villains are a little stereotypical, but so what? Timac is a lot of fun to watch. I love the Shonuff, the villain from Harlem. It's just a terrific little movie, and it's just so well done. Even the scenes between Timac and his family, his little brother and so on, are just so intimate, so well observed. It's just a terrific entertainment. There's no way that you can watch this movie and not, at the very least, be entertained by it. It's and I think I went to see it twice. I'm not sure, but it's quite possible. And I've revisited Last Dragon often. It's a lot of fun. So even though it may be a film for, I guess, kids, I'm entertained by it. It's not, again, this is not really Nowadays, it's not really, for me being in my 50s now, I don't really look at it as nostalgia so much as the fact that it's just enjoyable. There can be enjoyable films for kids that adults like too. So there you go. That film is just terrific entertainment and great martial arts sequences. Just really well done. All right, Jewel of the Nile is the absolute opposite. This was a sequel to Romancing the Stone, which came out, I think only about a year earlier. Now, Romancing the Stone, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with. Like, sometimes I have watched it more than once. I watch it, and I like it, and then other times I watch it and I say, this is not good. I don't know what it is. But this movie, Jewel of the Nile, is terrible. It's just boring. It's not exciting. It's got Michael Douglas back and Kathleen Turner. But so what? These two are just about as interesting as a pair of soiled diapers. I mean, they're just not... There's nothing there. There's no real chemistry. Whatever existed in terms of chemistry in Romancing the Stone is sadly gone in this movie. Probably because it's not the same director. Robert Zemeckis directed Romancing the Stone. At least he gave that movie some zest. This movie just moves at, it's like 2 heartbeats per minute. It's just not very exciting at all. And I don't have much more to say about it because I don't remember the plot, so don't ask me. All right, Fletch. Fletch is, I think, officially the first Chevy Chase movie I ever saw in the theater. I love Fletch. I love Chevy Chase as in that role. It's a quotable movie. In fact, I think I read years ago that Harvard, if you wanted to be admitted to Harvard, and I think it was Harvard, you had to be able to quote line by line Fletch, unless it was to be part of, or maybe to be part of the fraternity of Harvard, maybe not Harvard admissions. One of those. Somebody can correct me on that. I don't know if that's still a thing, but they wanted you to know Fletch, every single line. It's that quotable a movie, directed by Michael Ritchie, written by Andrew Bergman, who also worked on The In-Laws back in the day with Peter Falk. I just love Fletch. It's a movie I return to here and there. Every scene is memorable. It's just witty. It's fun. It's got some hair-raising car chase scene. One real hair-raising car chase sequence. Just everything about it is terrific. The sequel was crap, but this movie is terrific. So, all right, Falcon and the Snowman is one that my parents took me to see. Sean Penn, Timothy Hutton, based on a true story of 2 guys who, one of them worked for a government agency. I don't know if it was for the FBI, and they sold secrets to, I can't even remember if I don't think it was the Russians. I could be wrong. It's been a while. But it's based on a true story, and it's a real thriller. It's just tremendously done in every aspect, including the performances by Sean Penn, especially Sean Penn, who's almost unrecognizable in the role of one of the friends who are in collusion with these secrets that they're selling. They become spies, basically. But a terrific movie. I've always enjoyed Falcon and Snowman. I can't say enough good things about it. Extremely well acted, very well directed, very absorbing. Scene to scene, it just pulls you in. You don't know where it's going, even if you know the true story. And I think these 2 are still in prison. Just a terrific movie. All right, let's move on to, and I think that's probably the first film, by the way, that I'd ever seen by Sean Penn, and I definitely became a fan. All right, Explorers is a film by Joe Dante, and all I could say about Explorers is this. It's Ethan Hawke's debut. Aside from that, I took my brother to see it. Even my brother was bored by it. That's all I got to say. What a terrible film. I mean, it's a great idea that these kids, including, I think, River Phoenix, they build this spaceship, can take them into space, and of course they see some aliens. I liked that idea a lot, and it seems like it's perfect for a Joe Dante flick, but this movie was... It was a bore. Just awful. All right, National Lampoon's European Vacation, sequel to Vacation. by John Hughes. I always liked European Vacation. It's not as good as the original Vacation, but there's some funny gags in it. I like the scene which I think it's the plane that hits the Statue of Liberty and it knocks the torch over a little bit. There's some great gags in it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a little more sexed up, I guess, than the first Vacation movie, but it's still very funny. It's a great group, that family. But I'm not one of the fans of Christmas Vacation, or for that matter, Vegas Vacation. You're not going to find too many people wanting to quote from Vegas Vacation. It's okay if Christmas Vacation became sort of an annual Christmas type of movie for some reason or another, aside from its setting, but yeah, those movies were not good. But European Vacation I like, so yeah, that was enjoyable. All right, Daryl. Now, Daryl is a movie I don't have much recollection of. I think this young kid in it plays he was in the year prior in Neverending Story. And so this young kid actor is Barrett Oliver. And his name is an acronym, Daryl, for Data Analyzing Robot Youth Lifeform. I had to look that up because I didn't remember any of the stuff in it. I don't remember the movie at all. Mary Beth Hurt apparently is in it. Michael McKean. Yeah. I have heard that I think this was one of the influences for Stranger Things. He is this 10-year-old kid who happens to be a robot created by the government. But beyond that, don't ask me anything else because I don't remember. So, and I just don't have any real need to watch this movie again. So we'll leave that alone. I think I saw it with my friend Chris, but that was it. All right, Code of Silence. Now, this is one of the best Chuck Norris movies I've ever seen. It's an absolutely terrific movie, directed by Andrew Davis, who's listed in the credits as Andy Davis, but he later on did The Fugitive with Harrison Ford. And I'm sure he did something else. I think he did a film called Chain Reaction with Keanu Reeves. But Code of Silence is a phenomenal picture. It's very well done. I can't remember the basic story, to be honest with you, but whatever. I would have to see it again. I know it's set in Chicago, because Andrew Davis, I think, is from there, and most of his stories are set in Chicago. It's got some good action scenes. Chuck Norris is actually quite good in the film, and you kind of wish he had done more films like this. But that same year, he also did Invasion USA, which is one of the worst Chuck Norris films I've ever seen, aside from Hellbound. So we'll leave it at that. I didn't see Invasion USA in theaters, but anyway, yeah. Code of Silence. It's one of the best, and it's one of those movies too that I think the action is not so dependent, or the story is not so dependent on action scenes every few minutes. It's the story that's enough to do it. But I don't remember specifically the story. I just remember I enjoyed it. I've only really seen it once. I would have to revisit it again. Keep in mind, these are films that came out almost, at this point, close to 37 years ago. So, give me a break if I don't remember specifics. All right. And finally, we got Back to the Future. Now, this is a Robert Zemeckis masterpiece. It's one of the very best time travel movies ever made. It's full of action, comedy. It has a lot of heart to it. It is astoundingly imaginative, and it's coupled with the fact that it deals with the comparison to some degree of 1980s materialism with the 1950s squeaky clean type look. And it's just so terrific. Every scene is just terrific. We all know what Back to the Future is. This is one of those films that I saw 4 times in theaters. Goes to show how long that movie had been in theaters. I think for the better part of the year. And I don't know if that came out just before Independence Day. I'm not sure. But it was a summer movie. It's one of the best summer movies you could ever see. It's one of the most imaginative. It is quoted nowadays all the time. I find it interesting that the 2 sequels that followed, which I enjoy very much, not nearly as much as this film. It's hard to beat this movie, really, in any sequel. But I always imagined the original Back to the Future would be considered a classic, which I think it is pretty much now. But now the trilogy is seen as a classic. So I like that. I'm glad to see that the sequels got some recognition finally. Because at the time they didn't get a whole lot. Some people enjoyed them, some didn't. But it seems like it's grown in stature, and that's a good thing. And I'm really glad that there is no Back to the Future Part 4, 5, and 6. I think they can just leave it as it is. Because you would have to do a whole new story, and I think really whole new characters at this point. But hopefully that never happens. Leave the original trilogy alone. You know, nowadays they want to reboot everything, and in some cases remake. I'm sure there are some studio execs that said, "I love Back to the Future back in the day. Let's remake that movie." Well, thank God that didn't happen. Re-release them. That would be great. I would see them in theaters again. I've seen all three of them in theaters. Re-release the Back to the Future trilogy. That would be a great idea. They actually are, as of this writing, this is June 6th, I think it's actually this week, but only in some AMC theaters, they're showing Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters Afterlife. Interestingly, not Ghostbusters 2. So, it seems, but it's only a one-day only thing. Goes to show they don't really have any faith. They rather just remake these, and I don't know what it is. But that's all I got for now. This is it. These are all the films I saw in theaters in 1985. There are many other films I have seen that year that I did not see in theaters. Commando, Better Off Dead, Cat's Eye. Just looking over real quick, Desperately Seeking Susan, Fandango, Fright Night, which I wish I had seen in theaters. I didn't. The Goonies, I didn't even see in theaters. Jim Cotta, we don't have to talk about, but I definitely did not see that in theaters anyway, and I haven't really seen it at all. Into the Night with Jeff Goldblum, Michelle Pfeiffer. Journey of Natty Gann. The Jagged Edge, King Solomon's Mines, Kiss of the Spider-Woman. There are many other films that year. Lost in America, one of my favorite Albert Brooks comedies. So again, many of these films I have seen, I just didn't see them in theaters. And thank God I didn't see My Science Project. There was also Nightmare on Elm Street 2, The Official Story from Argentina, Out of Africa, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Purple Rose of Cairo, Prizzi's Honor. So many of these I didn't really see in theaters. Return to Oz, Rocky IV, and so on and so forth. But anyway, this is my overview, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. I will return in a couple of weeks and decide which other year I'll focus on. Might be in the latter part of the 1980s, maybe 1987 or 88. I would like to, spend time talking about films that I had seen in theaters. I think the theatrical experience, again, beats anything, and always will. So, all right. That's all I got to say about that. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies. If you know of any experiences you had with films that you saw in the 1980s, particularly in 1985 or 84, which I've also covered on this channel, or the 1970s flicks or anything, or any of these particular movies I just discussed, lend me your thoughts. Tell me your experience, what you experienced, and whether you like them or not, or any other pictures that came out that year. So, that's all I got to say about that. Please like and subscribe. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.